Hi everyone, it's Yoselyn with Remax Realty team bringing you this month's Market Snapshot. For the last few years, nearly every conversation about real estate has centered around these questions. When will mortgage rates come down? When will affordability ease? When will insurance costs come down? Etc. The assumption has been simple. Lower rates would bring buyers back. Fix the affordability tension, buyers will come back. Change the insurance gap, sellers would return to the market. Inventory would tighten and housing would return to normal. But what if we've been asking the wrong question? What if mortgage rates, affordability, insurance is just one piece of a much larger story? When economists study markets, they don't look at a single variable. They look at systems. They look at forces that encourage movement and the forces that create resistance. In economics, that resistance is often referred to as friction. Today's housing market is experiencing friction from multiple directions at once. Mortgage rates are one factor. Insuring costs are another. Property taxes, affordability concerns, inventory, consumer confidence, and even capital gain exposure all play a role. Individually, none of these issues are large enough to stop the market. Collectively, however, they can significantly alter movement. And that's exactly what we've experienced. The interesting part is that friction doesn't impact every market equally. Some markets are adjusting faster than others. Some are already showing signs of stabilization. Inventory levels are improving in many areas. Pending sales activity continue to recover. Consumer confidence has improved. Migration into Florida continues. While conditions are far from perfect, perfect is not required for a market to regain momentum. Markets don't turn when everything becomes ideal. Markets turn when conditions become less restrictive. That distinction is important because it challenges one of the most common assumptions in real estate today, the belief that one variable alone determines housing activity. History tells us otherwise. Rates absolutely influence consumer behavior. They affect affordability, monthly payments, and purchasing power. But rates do not completely control housing activity. If they did, housing sales would rise and fall in perfect alignment with interest rates, and that simply hasn't been the case. The reality is that people make housing decisions for reasons that extend far beyond financing. In fact, some of the strongest housing decisions have very little to do with economics at all. People get married, families grow, children leave home, careers change, parents age, retirement arrives, health situations evolve, properties are inherited. Life happens. And when life happens, housing needs often changes along with it. This is one of the reasons many economists believe that housing activity is more resilient than people realize. Economic conditions can delay decisions. They can influence timing, but life events often create needs that eventually outweigh economic hesitation. At the same time, homeowners today possess something that previous generations rarely experienced at this scale: equity. American homeowners now hold more than $35 trillion in home equity. The wealth exists. The challenge is that much of that wealth is sitting on the sidelines. Many homeowners are financially capable of moving, but remain reluctant to do so. Some are locked into low mortgage rates. Others are concerned about insurance costs, taxes, replacement housing, or simply the uncertainty of what comes next. The issue is not lack of equity. The issue is lack of mobility. And mobility matters because housing operates more like an ecosystem than most people realize. One transaction often creates another. A homeowner sells and purchases a different property. A buyer purchases that home and creates movement elsewhere. A downsizer frees inventory for another family. A growing family creates demand for additional housing. Movement tends to generate more movement. That's why the market doesn't require a dramatic event to improve. It simply requires enough friction to be removed so that people begin moving again. Some of these potential catalysts are already emerging. Some insurance markets appear more stable than they did a year ago. Inventory has decreased. Consumer confidence has strengthened. Discussions around tax modernization continue. And over time, even modest improvements can create meaningful change. Of course, sellers are not the only group facing uncertainty. Buyers have their own concerns. Many are waiting for rates to fall. Others worry about overpaying. Some are trying to determine whether now is the right time or whether a better opportunity exists somewhere ahead. Ironically, waiting often carries its own risks. When financing becomes more attractive, competition typically increases. More buyers enter the market, negotiation leverage shifts. The opportunities available today may not be available tomorrow. Now, this doesn't mean that every buyer should purchase immediately. It simply means that every decision involves trade-offs, and understanding those trade-offs is often more valuable than trying to perfectly time the market. Which brings us to perhaps the most important takeaway. The role of the real estate professional is changing. Historically, agents were often viewed as people who help consumers find homes. Today's market requires something different. Today's consumers are looking for guidance. They're looking for clarity. They're looking for someone who can identify obstacles, navigate complexity, and help them make informed decisions. In other words, the most valuable agents are no longer simply finding houses. They're removing friction. They're helping homeowners understand equity. They're helping families evaluate timing. They're helping buyers understand opportunity. They're helping consumers navigate uncertainty. Because ultimately, the housing market isn't broken. It isn't waiting to be rescued, and it isn't standing still. It's simply navigating a period of friction. As that friction continues to ease, movement returns, and that process may already be underway. And the question isn't whether the market would eventually unlock. The question is who will be prepared when it does. Thanks for watching. See you again next month, and remember, success is your only option.